Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Whitney Stoll, your DC Post President. So welcome to our November First Friday webinar. So thank you for joining us here today on human factors and workplace design. So designing spaces that are more naturally human with our presenter, Rebecca Horton from Miller Knoll. Joined by me is Samantha Long and Bree Beal, who are behind the scenes moderating our webinar today and will also be monitoring the chat. So we have over 60 registered participants from all over the world ready to learn more about today's webinar. And please join me in welcoming our guest presenter. Rebecca will discuss what you need to know about the 3 factors in ergonomic design to help create a more connected and humanly centered workspaces for you, your team, and your organization. This is a great topic for those looking to design with an understanding of the physical, social, and cognitive ergonomics in the workplace. But first, I'd like to start by welcoming you to our first Friday webinar series, which is provided to you through SAME's commitment to offering the AEC community effective training, development, and networking programs. The DC Post is helping sustain the future of the profession with these monthly education-focused sessions to deliver topical and relevant content to our industry. So thank you for all joining us here today as we start our program. So please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself, share your LinkedIn profile, add any contact information with everyone throughout the presentation. Ask questions so we can address them during the Q&A portion at the end. Also, for those, since this is a WebEx application, you have the option to save the chat at any time for going up to File, scrolling down to Save, and clicking Save Chat. You may have noticed we are recording this session, and we will post it on our YouTube channel later on this month and send you the slides with your PDH certificate as soon as the webinar ends. We are glad that we can offer you an hour of education and virtual networking regardless of where you're attending from. Let's start with a moment of silence to remember our active duty military, first responders, and all who need our care and thoughts throughout the world right now. Thank you. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'd like to take a moment to recognize our DC Post First Friday sponsors, which are Fox Rothschild, KCCT, and Parsons Corporation. We truly appreciate your support, and we are grateful for your generosity by making this webinar series possible. Your support helps us meet our society's goals, including providing educational content for our members, industry and government engagement, building resilient communities, connecting with our future leaders through our student and young member groups, enriching the STEM pipeline, and preparing our military and veterans for life after service. If you're not already a DC Post sponsor and would like to support our post with annual sponsorship, we'd love to add your name to the slide for future programs and events this year. Annual Platinum sponsors and First Friday sponsors help support this webinar with free registration for SAME members and full-time students. So please visit our website for more information about sponsorship levels and how you can give back to the SAME community through your DC Post sponsorship. So now it's time for the main program. Please note this program will provide 1 professional development hour from the DC Post. So look for an email with the subject line, document delivery from SAME DC and Eventbrite with a copy of our program slides, your PDH certificate, and a list of opt-in attendees who registered for the session. We are recording this webinar and we will post a video on our website later on. So I am not going to read the learning objectives on the slide since most of you saw these objectives when you registered. Instead, I'm going to introduce to you Rebecca. And when I do the introduction, if you haven't done so already, please use the chat, introduce yourself, share contact information, where you're calling in from. Let us know if you're going to be down in New Orleans. We'd love to be able to meet up with you there. This is your webinar series to help you learn more about the special topic, as well as help you expand your business network during the program. Share comments and ask questions as well. If there's a particular slide you want to talk about, share the detail in the chat. We'll answer all the questions from the chat at the end of the program. And don't forget to save the chat if you'd like to before you exit the webinar. So now I'd like to introduce Rebecca. So Rebecca Horton is a multidisciplinary strategist who is a licensed professional environmental geoscientist who formerly led a Fortune 50 corporate environmental, health, safety, and sustainability organizations with their physical, social, and cognitive needs throughout the work-based design development. She's a WELL AP and WELL facility member throughout the International WELL Building Institute, an internationally certified psychological safety executive leadership coach, an ergonomic specialist, and a member of the Global Office Ergonomic Research Committee. She represents Miller-Knoll on the IWBI Materials Concept Advisory Board as a subject matter expert. So welcome, Rebecca. I'm going to turn the program over to you.
Thank you. Well, welcome to Human Factors in Workplace Design. Thank you for having us today. We are going to explore designing spaces that are more naturally human. This is copyrighted, but if there's anything that is of interest to you, please let me know, because I can always share individual slides if you would like. When we feel better, we work better. And so that's one of the many reasons that it's critical to consider human factors in workplace design. The office that takes the whole human being into consideration is an office that encourages movements, large and small, throughout the day. It allows us to initiate and regulate our social interactions, and it takes into consideration factors like personal space, physical and psychological proximity, and territoriality. It helps us basically feel better. Now, this is a content that is specifically directed to designers of spaces, but what we see at Miller-Knoll is that our audiences, such as the Society of Human Factors Resource Management, so SHRM, so human factors, human resource professionals want to know this content. Managers want to know this content. Anyone who is in a position of authority, who's trying to engage their workforce, wants to know this content, because this explains how things are designed and why. And so if something's not working in your work environment, it gives you really a peek behind the curtain, if you will, to know how to change certain elements to get your workplace where you want it to be. So our learning objectives were already mentioned. We're going to dive in just into a very shallow pool of physical, cognitive, and social ergonomics and how that impacts design. One of our most influential designers at Miller-Knoll is Gilbert Rohde, and he said the most important thing in the room is not the furniture, it's the people. So macro ergonomics, has really taken center stage in conversations with, the elephant in the room, what we've gone through in the past 4 years. There was a period of time when many of us left the office and worked in different locations. And now, whether it be an edict or an actual standard that's come out, that is driving us back into the office, there is some friction that is happening. And so we look back to the findings of macro ergonomics and why things are designed the way they are to help us understand best how to bring people back in and engage them. So ergonomics is derived from two words, ergon meaning work and nomos meaning natural laws. So human factors is the study of ergonomics among humans and other elements of a system. So it's the fit between our work and our bodies. Why do we care? Corporations, government entities care about ergonomics in the workplace because it costs us a lot of money if we don't get it right. 47% of workers spend time doing computer-based work. That's their official computer-based work. So that's the work that you're doing now. That doesn't include time over lunch when you're glancing down at your handheld device. It doesn't include time that you're sitting in front of a television in the evenings. That's just confined to that. So 91%, as a result of this computer time, 91% of us have computer vision syndrome. 66 million people in the US alone. So computer vision syndrome is essentially when we have habits for our eyes that impact our vision. What we see with a younger generation, just a factoid that I think is fascinating, is there was something, computer vision syndrome was first noted post-World War II, whenever veterans got off of subs, they had actually lost their long distance vision. And the reason being is because, on the sub, everything was at arm's length, and that was their focal length. And so being confined over a period of time, once they got off and looked around and like looked at the distance, their vision had been diminished significantly. Thankfully, the human brain is very elegant in the way it rewires itself, and that does come back. But it gave us really insights for the first time ever, because of the military, into this syndrome. What we're seeing now is very young people having the equivalent of, post-World War II soldier eyes, because they are going from having their handheld in front of them all day long, whether it be an Apple Watch, their phone. A lot of them don't drive, so they're not commuting long distances to look out over the horizon. It's really, really interesting, how that's taking place. So, our surroundings are definitely impacting our bodies, and that's something that's factored into the design. By age 60, we need 3 times more light than we did at age 20. So when you are in the workplace and you are managing, large groups of people, and you're hearing complaints about lighting, it's too dark in here, it's too bright in here, there's a reason for that. And it goes back to this statistic. 8 out of 10 workers experience back pain at some point. So these are, this is not even our outside plant workers or very active workers. These are people who are knowledge workers, as we call them, who are sitting inside of an office day in and day out. So back pain is a big ticket item when it comes to healthcare. And while, in the civilian world, we're insured and it drives up insurance costs, in your world, it does, can clog the system with, the healthcare that is available in that system, because it becomes overwhelmed with, things that are purely preventable and causes problems in that area. For every dollar that we spend on an ergonomic intervention, we recognize $17.50 savings. So it is worth that investment to address this. So the human to environment relations process, ultimately the goal of design is to remove friction, physically, cognitively, and socially. So the more comfortable individuals are and the more adaptable a space is, the more productive and satisfied that your employees will be. So when you think about it in terms of a comfortable sleep, a mattress firmness matters, the temperature of the room matters, the direction the bed is facing matters, the materiality matters. All of those things come into play. Even the noise matters. So that can either give you a great night's sleep or completely ruin you. So when we enter a room, we have a perception of the environment. We survey, where do we want to sit? Where's that? We do this all within a split second. Oh, there's an air vent there. There's a fan blowing over there. Oh, I want my back against the wall. I don't want to have my back to the door. And if our position is meeting, our needs, then we're, we sit down and we're productive. If it doesn't meet our needs, then there's this attempt to adapt our environment. One of the things in my days of doing, really hardcore ergonomic assessments in the workplace that I would come across is little rear view mirrors on people's monitors. And it was this, adaptation. They did not like having people passing behind them or people sneaking up on them for a very good reason. My baby brother is retired military, 22 years, and he does have a disability of PTSD, and sneaking up on him is not something that you do. It is something that can just physically disrupt his day. So I saw in so many cases, it was a baby mirror, basically from Target or something from the baby store, on that screen. That is a clear indication that coping mechanism has to be their workplace has to be adapted, because that coping mechanism is failing. Their desk is in the wrong place. Same thing with glare. There are areas I've visited where I see call centers and they'll have umbrellas up over their spaces, and it's directly tied to glare. So that's a clear sign. So when you are managing people and you survey, and you want a standard environment, and you see these one-offs, that is an indication that the design isn't working. And there's a real good way to do a root cause analysis and get down to why. So there are 3 branches of ergonomics. So remember, the hallmark of systems thinking is understanding each element and balancing its demands within the system and with the other elements. So this way the system performance can be optimized. That's the entire discipline of ergonomics. In ergonomic systems, we strive to minimize the compromises that are made in any one branch to make up for an imbalance in another. So when I talk about physical, cognitive, and social ergonomics, it's very hard to separate these because I liken it to taking your thumb, and we don't do this, but taking your thumb and sticking a thumbtack in it or a pin in it and trying to write, an eloquent essay, all while being very delightful. It doesn't happen. They're all tied together. If you're in pain, odds are you're going to be crabby, and working with crabby people is not a desirable environment. So we know these things are tied together, but let's separate them for the sake of the conversation to get the conversation started. So physical ergonomics is the fit between our bodies, the tools, the task, and the environment. And the areas that we focus on are anthropometry, because it has to do with pain and health. We focus on musculoskeletal disorders and the environmental effect that buildings have on our bodies. In this case, buildings, because we're talking about knowledge workers. This, of course, is applicable to every aspect of our lives and every aspect of our different types of work, whether you be an astronaut, a forklift driver, a teacher. It applies to all work. But specifically, we're going to talk about knowledge workers. So anthropometrics, or anthropometry, is the chief methodology of determining the fit between the body and our tools and surroundings. It's done by defining body dimensions. This is adhered to very strictly in some businesses, and it's it's not quite as strict in others. So in a knowledge-based business, the desk height is not going to be a life or death issue. It may be a comfort issue. While in other different organizations, I worked before coming to Miller Knoll. I worked for Bombardier, and part of my physical before I was hired there was I had to go through this, what I would call it as a contortionist test, where you had to take your hand and place it on your opposite hand on your opposite hip on the back of your body, and do all of these interesting physical feats, and your eye test, of course, and all of it. And it was really to see if your body was adaptable to the flight deck. I was just an EHS person. I was not going to be in the cockpit at all, but that's just the standard physical. It's part of it. And it's because, that is one environment that is not highly adjustable. You have to fit in that environment. We don't do that with the workplace, because we've now learned that we have adjustability in in the way we can adjust our furniture and our settings. But it just depends on what environment you're in. This body science is fascinating, because this is something, this is one of the reasons why when you're helping your employees and they say, hey, this just is not working for me, my environment is uncomfortable, you can't do it over the phone. You actually have to go and visit with them and sit with them face to face to see what is not jiving in their environment, what measurement is not hitting right. Because as human beings, all of our bodies are different. And while we're able to maybe, get an idea based on height and weight, our limbs and our torso length really throw things off whenever you're designing for a work setting. Just based on listening to height and weight can throw us off. So how the environment affects our bodies, using an ergonomically sound approach to work helps us minimize and prevent pain and discomfort by encouraging neutral body postures and healthy movement and motion. When we say neutral body postures, if you think about taking, and I have a skeleton right there, but I'm not going to bust it out. It's my Halloween skeleton. He's right around the corner. But you think about a neutral posture, and you think about a human skeleton, hanging in a laboratory, that beautiful S curve of the spine, whenever it's being held by a single point, that is a neutral posture. So whenever you're standing or you're sitting, that's the way your spine should look. So when we strive for neutral postures, that is our goal. We don't want to be shaped like a cashew in a C shape, because that is an incredibly uncomfortable posture. And it ultimately lends us to becoming kyphotic and having strain on our cervical spine. We want to keep that nice posture that can be accomplished while sitting or standing. And if we are not able to maintain that neutral posture, we do see that we incur fatigue. Musculoskeletal disorders are a result of being out of a neutral posture and awkward posture for a long period of time. So it's a chronic position, it builds over time, and multiple musculoskeletal disorders are very expensive to treat. They affect our upper limbs, including our wrists and hands. You've probably heard of carpal tunnel. They affect our neck, especially our cervical spine. Tech neck has been the hot topic for the, ever since really handheld devices have come into play. Chiropractic visits across the nation have increased. And then, of course, always the back is affected by not having a neutral spine. A neutral spine is the strongest place that our bodies can rest. So what are the design considerations for supporting physical ergonomics in the physical body? Well, you need to have range of motion for your people. You need to have work surface height adjustability. And if you don't have that adjustability, you need to be able to manage your day so that you stand up during long calls, that you're not seated all around the clock. Monitor placement and flexibility is important because our focal length changes throughout the day based on our blood sugar. If you have a fixed monitor, you should place it on a monitor arm so that you can move that monitor to and from your face throughout the day, because after lunch, when your blood sugar is different, your focal length will vary and you may find yourself leaning in to the screen, which is very hard. It throws your body out of neutral. And then you've got to have flexibility in your mouse and your keyboard. You want to have a mouse pad of some type so that you anchor your mouse next to your body. It is our habit to, as we start to concentrate and start to mouse, that our arm will extend outward, and that can cause pain in the subscapularis, the deltoid, and up into the cervical spine. And then, of course, remember what I said about 60-year-olds needing 3 times more lighting than 20-year-olds. Individual lighting control is a critical part of that comfort. But of course, with eye strain, it affects your posture, it affects your body position. So let's talk about cognitive ergonomics. Cognitive ergonomics is a critical part of your worker's day. So we only have so much we only have so much RAM, if it were, and to be able to process. Cognitive ergonomics is the fit between our brains and our tools, task, and environment. If things are too difficult to approach in the workplace, if it takes me 20 minutes to figure out how to use my task chair, that's time spent on something that is important, but much more trivial than the actual work I'm getting paid to do. So we want to decrease the friction in the workplace from a cognitive perspective so that people are on task, on time. We can only take in so much information. And if our surroundings are so complex, again, it takes us away from the work we're doing. We can only process a finite amount of information. And this is remarkably consistent across subjects. And when the rate of stimuli and the input exceeds, we have cognitive, we have a cognitive glitch, and we have errors, and stress occurs. That the errors increase, the stress increases, and the stress does lead to pain because you are tightening up. So people have a limited amount of mental resources, and you only have so much of those mental resources you can dedicate to thinking. We don't want to have our environment stress us out or produce what is known as cognitive overload. Cognition in the office environment. Some of the critical factors that affect our minds and how our minds process information is the amount of light. Think about whenever light is lower, you have more difficulty and strain. Think about what happens when you are on a dark road and you are trying to concentrate on driving and it begins to rain. If you have a radio on or some type of music on, odds are you will reach to try to turn that down because your brain can only process so much. So if you have a podcast on or radio on, and it's dark and it starts raining, that's too much going on for most brains. So that's why we do, reach over to turn the radio down, because all of these things affect us. Noise, it does affect us in our ability to concentrate. Natural views actually help us to center and to be able to concentrate. If you get too in the zone, silence is not golden. You need to have some sort of a veritable buzz to keep you alert. Natural views help to give you that moment of reset and refresh so that your brain does stay fresh. Cognitive maps. So this is kind of going into some basic architecture. These are some of the things that designers and architects talk about, like day one, class one. Cognitive maps had 5 elements. So when you're in a workplace, I worked for a period of time in a downtown office that was, this monolithic office with just miles of cubicles. And the only way that I could wayfind through the sea of cubicles, there was, we weren't allowed to put up plants and things of that nature, but there was one veteran who was allowed to put up a flag. And so when I saw his cubicle and I saw that flag, I knew that I was getting close to the restroom. So that's not how you want to design, because you're literally having to count the number of rows to get to your destination. So you're spending cognition on something that is relatively trivial, but that is needed if you need to get out of that space. So designers and architects design for paths, edges, district nodes, and landmarks. So this is think about a small city or small village in Italy, and how you have a central fountain in the middle, you have a square, you have a church. There are things that just intuitively allow you to know where you are in that space. And that's the way architects and designers design for office spaces, so that we intuitively are able to navigate around. You can get from one place to another by glancing around while having a conversation. You're not counting the rows of the cubicles to get to your next destination. So design considerations for cognitive environments include appropriate amounts and types of lighting and noise, having a veritable buzz. Remember, silence isn't golden. We are stimulated when we have that sense that other people are working with a sense of urgency. We want to join in. It's why students go to libraries to study. It's more effective to be around other quiet people who are studying than just to be stuck in a dorm room. It gives us that sense that we're a part of a bigger initiative. Natural elements are critical. There's an entire CEU about natural elements and biophilic design. That is something that we know helps healing times in a clinical setting, but it just helps to refresh us, during the day as we go about our work. And then views to the outsides as you're planning offices, for your own office and for your employees. We know now more than ever that views to the outside and that exposure to natural life is critical for our cognition, our cognitive health, because it ties directly to our circadian rhythms and our sleep patterns, which is also an entire CU in and of itself. And then remember, there are the elements of a cognitive map that help make an environment intuitive. Next up, let's look at social ergonomics. Social ergonomics has come into the forefront of the office and office design and return to office because we've had sort of a glitch or a gap, if you will, in our social ability to relate. The U.S. Surgeon General recently published a report called The Epidemic of Loneliness. It was just after pandemic. I think it's probably been about 20 something months ago, and it was such an interesting look into what's happening with us socially, how we were impacted by being closed in some cases, how and then specifically we are looking now at that first generation of workers who were those high schoolers who were shut in and kind of deprived of all the things that a natural high schooler would have been exposed to. But those are the individuals who are now entering the workforce. So social ergonomics and understanding, how to support individuals is critical. So we're going to delve into some of the tried and true areas. So we form relationships by caregiving and then an affiliative relationship. So when we're in the workplace, we have mentorships, we have groups. They're all ways that we form these relationships. We have what we call loose ties. So we have individuals with whom we come into contact with. We may not even know their last names, but they're just kind of in your orbit. But when you see those individuals, and maybe the person at the coffee bar, your eyes light up, you recognize them. It's a positive thing, but it's not something someone you work with constantly. Then we have something called strong ties, which those are the people in your immediate group that you know everything about them. You know their kids' names, probably their wife's names, what they're going through. And so this is part of how we form these relationships. The characteristics of a group, we've got roles, norms, there's status in a group, cohesiveness, and size. So culture development is forced to live through virtual means, but we've seen these fundamentals of relationship building, really find their way into our internal resource teams, where they're performed around affiliative and caregiving principles. The rise in isolation, though, has impacted us. Let's talk about proxemics. So as folks re-enter the workforce, we have this, the habits that we've formed. They're things that are just intrinsic to being human. And one of those things, has to do with proxemics. If you travel to other countries, it's not the same in every culture. It's not the same, studies show, for gender. So for female gender, our proxemics with other females tends to be closer with children. For male female, proxemics tends to be farther apart, with what's socially acceptable. But we have it broken down into intimate, so you can see it's 1 to 1.5 feet, personal 1.5 to 4 feet, social 4 feet to 12 feet, and then public, which is 12 to 25 feet. Spending a significant amount of time in China, public is very much more close to the US social. So public, there are people who are right next to you, but with 1.5 billion people in one location, that is bound to happen. So this is one of the effects on the social ergonomics in our workplace. We have a tendency to stake our claims. If you don't think this is true, think back to the last time you were on the middle seat of an aircraft and you wanted to have at least one elbow on an elbow rest, on an armrest. People stake their claims. It's just this desire you want to establish, what is yours. And we do this through ways of having primary space, secondary space, and public space. Our primary space is, it would be my current desk right here. Secondary space would be, when I'm in an office, it would be the space. I'm in a group of 30 designers, architects, and researchers. That would be the space that's for those people who come together, my team. And if anybody from outside my team is in our conference room, I will let them know. We're like, what's IT doing in our conference room? It's that territory. It's what we feel we own. And then there are those tertiary spaces, which are those shared spaces, which is something like the cafeteria. We don't tend to be territorial unless there's somebody from outside of our company. We're like, what are those people doing in our cafeteria? So it's just part of who we are, and it affects us socially. We have this desire from a social perspective to regulate our privacy. So there's 3 types of privacy: auditory, visual, and social. And on this slide, for the longest time, I did not realize that is a finger on the slide, and it's sliding back and forth to social interaction and privacy. The more our settings and our surroundings allow us to regulate when and how we interact. So I'm socially active, there's a lot of chatter going on, but being able to slide that over to privacy gives the workers you manage much more satisfaction. Being bombarded with people all day in and day out may work for some extreme extroverts, but not for ambiverts and introverts. It just doesn't work for them. They need that respite time to recover. Same thing with personal sharing and group sharing. To be able to regulate when you have that ability to come into contact with one-on-one person, and when you are in your larger group and sharing on a larger scale. And settings can design to support these. It comes down to purposeful variety in your workplace. So design considerations for social ergonomics include supports for groups of different sizes, allowing people to decide how much and regulate how much personal space they want. encouraging spontaneous interaction through shared pathways and resources. Remember, when we see those loose ties or those weak ties, we still get a dopamine hit. You still want to have contact with people, even if they're not maybe a very strong tie. And allowing individuals to regulate their privacy, regulate the amount of people time, as it were, that they have during their day, and allowing individuals to personalize space that is in their private space. So these are the principles of social ergonomics. So in closing, I want to remind you that ergonomics is about more than just the body. It's about more than just carpal tunnel. It truly is about the human being as a whole, and it's embedded in the physical, cognitive, and social well-being of each of us. And now I'm going to open it to Q&A.
Well, well, great. Well, Rebecca, really appreciate that, and thank you for the great overview. And so, please feel free to use the chat if anybody has any questions for Rebecca and the team. So, we do have a couple of questions, at least on my end, to get this going. So, want to kind of go back to you. You had a good financial kind of overview. And it was looking at the 1750. So where does that dollar amount really come from? It said for every dollar invested in the ergonomic intervention strategy in the office environment, you said there's a return of $17.50. Does this return really come in a form of like frustrations, injuries, productivity? Can you kind of break that down for me?
Absolutely. This comes directly from actual research that's performed by the OERC. The OERC is a global consortium that does this very type of research. It's associated with a woman named Michelle Robertson, who is, I believe, currently out of the University of Northwestern University. But it does come from comparing, workers' compensation numbers and insurance numbers. And then those categories, remember I mentioned, these are the big ticket items, wrists and arms, necks, and lower backs. So it is truly, that it's that risk aversion, it's risk management, which I know is something that is very familiar in your operations. So it's, that cost avoidance, knowing what it costs and trending, and then implementing those interventions, and then seeing what that impact is and how those costs are driven down in the business. So it's taken on a global average.
Got it. Okay. All right. Could you kind of do a brief overview of what is the OERC?
Oh, sure. Office Ergonomic Research Committee is a consortium of companies from around the world, and I can name them. It's not private. Miller Knoll is one of them. Amazon, Dell, Microsoft, Liberty Mutual. They're large. Nike, large companies. Apple. There's a lot of big guys, and so we come together on a quarterly basis. I get to represent Miller Knoll on this committee. We come together on a quarterly basis, and we talk about trends in office and workplace ergonomic injuries. Like, where can we drive improvement? What's changing? I mentioned that, with the younger generation that's coming into the workforce, maybe an emphasis on social ergonomics is necessary. With so much screen time, and going from your handheld to your Apple Watch and no driving, maybe the focus is visual ergonomics. That's actually our focus this coming quarter. But what we do is we really dig into looking for these areas, and then we coordinate with brilliant young minds from around the world at universities who put together proposals. They propose those to the committee, and then we fund their research. We take that research and we share it within our companies, and eventually that research makes it out to you, and by means of things like this CEU. There are elements of that research that are in the CEU because everything is research based.
Got it. No, I appreciate the breakdown. So when it comes to, is it anthrometry, which is the legs, so with body measurements, has that really changed at all, or are we still using is it the Caesar data?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. We started out using military data. So when everything was built in the 50s, we used the answer data, and it was, the preponderance were very young, fit men. And so that was, the largest data set we had. And so that is reflected in our table heights, which is about, 29 to 30 inches, which for women, if we measure populations, based on gender and percentiles. So if you think, if you go to the pediatrician and they, talk about what percentiles your child is in, we, from ergonomist perspective, we also talk in percentiles. And so for like seated women, the 50th percentile seated women, so that's half of the female population, a standard work surface is too high for them because it was designed based on that answer data, based on the military data. We went back to the drawing board, and we had the civilian data that was introduced, and that's still used, but that civilian data was heavily leaning toward America and Europe. So it left out an entire half of the globe. So now we are leaning and analyzing that through different channels to include a larger sampling of people. And while we think about, Asia, that those, the sizes are smaller, and we do create lines of furniture in Asia that are smaller. In the United States, our furniture is growing. So there was a recent, finding with an institution called BIFMA. It's a Business Industrial Furniture Association, that the seat pans need to be wider. So that is a moving target. I'm really glad you brought it up, because you don't think about it when you just go sit down at a chair at, say, Wendy's or McDonald's, but that's been precisely calculated to try to fit the population. So
Well, yeah, I'm 6'5", so
oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, so trying to find a standing desk for me is tough. But I know Monica is always going to try to convince me.
Wow. Wow.
Otherwise, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're
So trying
definitely
to
on the
find,
higher percentile male standing. Yes, yes. But
yeah,
we
and not only
accommodate
that,
that.
yeah. So that's an issue. But no, but I appreciate the breakdown on that. So, but from your standpoint, get end makers to really be able to make sure that design spaces are meeting all of the workplace, best practices, but also really incorporating privacy, as well.
We do something, we don't really just, throw furniture at folks. We do something that's, called a design charrette. And so before, anyone sets up their office, is an inclusive design process. So, that the implications of the design are considered on the front end, so that it's not just like, okay, surprise, here's your new workplace. We bring a group of individuals together, representative of the overall organization, and also including, special populations. So individuals that may have a disability or something, anyone that has something relevant, bringing it in, and discussing that design process, and discussing on the front end, and determining, okay, well, how many respite spaces do you think we need for privacy? Or do we just need some phone booths? What is the preference, the work preference of this group? And really get down to, what is their purpose? What are their objectives? And decide that before ever, thinking about putting the design together or placing a piece of furniture in a space. That's all done on the front end. That's painful. I can tell you that is a painful, that's a painful process. But I liken it, I have two daughters, and I liken it to when I go to the grocery store by myself. It is so simple. I just love going to the grocery store by myself. I'm in and out. If I take my two daughters, God help me, because it's two carts. It's stuff that I cannot even fathom buying. But when I get back, my month goes really nicely if they've gone with me, because I don't hear, Mom, we don't have, Mom, we don't have, Mom, we don't have. And if I go by myself, I hear that for the entire, whatever, 2 weeks our groceries last. If they go, then they've had their input, and my life is sweet. So I feel like sometimes like I'm a facility manager of my own house, and that if I allow input, then it goes great. And that's what inclusive design is. It is worth the, that kind of moment of pain to have a really, good long end product. So
And you're probably spending a lot more money if they go with you as well.
you spend more money, but there's a greater satisfaction, rating.
Oh, 100%.
Fewer trips back to the drawing board.
Exactly. Yeah. So we definitely have a question around right now. It's really the return to work, going back to the office. So it's a big issue in office spaces. So can ergonomics and design really for comfort or social aspects entice people to come back to the office rather than stay at home and work from home?
That's an incredibly deep question. We could talk about that for a long time, but to answer, is good ergonomics going to entice people back? Not necessarily. If people have formed some really bad habits, it's so difficult to break those habits. But here's what we do know. Exposing people to good ergonomics in a good setting is going to break those habits, because they're going to realize I don't have these things at home. This has been thoughtfully designed. We don't know what's in people's homes. They could be sitting on a sofa for all we know. And we do see, and there is an uptick in back pain when people are returning to the office because they have been sitting in poor postures. What we do know is what we provide them, from a health safety perspective in office. So, they don't have a rat's nest of cords that they can trip over in the office, because that's controlled. We don't, again, know what their home is like. So the value of the office, is truly having these thoughtfully designed settings that we know, we've been doing this for a very long time, support the human brain, support social aspects, and then support fully, the physical body. One of the things that we've seen, and it goes back to that epidemic of loneliness I mentioned, is that people are lonely, they're suffering, but then they stay in a state of withdrawal, which is not the answer. So bringing people back into the workplace, the formal workplace, is what we need to do. It's positive for our psyche, but we also have to be respectful that even if you're bringing back the same people, same social security numbers, same everything that were, pre-pandemic, they're changed. They're different people. They've lost family members. They've lost maybe their spouse's jobs. They've had some things going on in their life, and they may need to be accommodated differently. One of the things that we talk about with privacy is the need for respite. So I mentioned this previously, say a veteran with PTSD, you feel your blood boil, you want to push the reset button, you need a place to go. You don't want to just sit at your desk or have to go to the restroom. Same thing with someone who's maybe neurodivergent, someone who's OCD, ADHD, they're starting to get overwhelmed, too many people coming at them. A place for respite is super valuable. There are a lot of studies that support that if you want people to work and be able to have a healthy work day and be productive and engaged, giving them those little areas to just have that micro break. And these areas aren't even designed for, to keep people from setting up shop and going, well, this is my personal office now. These areas aren't even designed to have a plug in there. It's designed to go in, maybe some soft seating, and it could be something as simple as a curtain being drawn to where you sit in there and just kind of collect yourself, take some deep breaths, chill out, and then come back out refreshed and able, to work and engage with people. So that's one of the things that we're really seeing that is so important about the design, and it is directly related to social ergonomics, is honoring a place of respite in the workplace.
No, I couldn't agree more. Abby asked the question, the government loves its cubicles. I might have added a couple of loves in there, but that's besides the point. Are there ways that one can integrate control privacy considerations into cubicle design, or do we just need to offer other types of spaces around the office where they can go into control and privacy? An example, meeting rooms, phone booths, etc.
Yeah, there's still cubicles are still around, and one of our founding designers, is responsible for that, and he said, I just don't want to, be known as a father of the cubicle, but unfortunately he is. Cubicles, serve a purpose. We really have had an emphasis on lowering the walls, because when you're in a cubicle, and we've all been there, the loud talker next to you, and you're like, oh my God, why are you doing that? Why are you so loud? I can hear everything you're saying, but you have the perception when you're in the cubicle, because the walls could be high, that no one can hear you. Well, they can. So, we've done extensive study around this, and, saying, just lowering the cubicle helps to lower the volume, because then people see you out of the corner of your eye, like, oh, I better, tone it down a little bit. But there are times that we do need to have, full on privacy, for confidential calls, maybe one quick personal call. If, your kid's school is calling, you got to take that. And so we do see the importance of adjacencies and things, as she mentioned, like just a space that is near, that you don't have to walk all the way across the office to get to, maybe a small phone booth, or, just stepping into a small meeting room. But acoustic privacy is the number one complaint in the workplace, because, my speaking is, in my perception, that's a perfect volume, but you're too loud. So, your noise and I'm just sound. That is an ongoing challenge. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head when you said, is there an adjacency that can solve for that? That's what we try to do. And again, how many of those per employee group? That's something that is discussed in the design charrette, based on the level of privacy that's needed in your work and what have you. That's examined in the design charrette.
That's great. Yeah. And we need to wrap up on a couple of things, but Rebecca's more than happy to stay on if any additional questions come in. I do want to have a brief moment to introduce Monica Manfi, who's local here to the DC Post, had a few words to say before we close up. So Monica, I'll give you a brief moment to say hello.
I am your local representative, and certainly interested in supporting anyone that's interested in learning more about this topic. I'm always fascinated with some of the content that comes out of this overview, because so many things go into the design of what we're creating for our federal and our public sector customers that maybe aren't always top of mind. So love to support anyone looking to learn more. Also, happy to get Rebecca reconnected to do other overviews for folks. And if I can be a resource, we've got a showroom here. Always happy to support, and I'm looking forward to connecting with anyone that has an interest in learning more about what we're doing to make workspaces effective, productive, and safe, and supportive of this generation of workers. So thanks for the opportunity.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Monica and Rebecca. Thanks again. They'll both put their contact information in the chat for you to be able to, if you have any additional questions outside of here. So again, thank you all for participating in today's session. Really appreciated everyone's time today. Very informative. It definitely had some interest from everyone. So before we wrap up our program here today, I would like to spend some time on share some of the upcoming events we do have planned. So please mark your calendar for some of the local Post events, as well as some of the upcoming national events as well. So we are committed to bringing you more content and fun events throughout this winter. So our next First Friday session is Friday, December 6th with CMMC going live, implications for all government contractors, presented by Derek Kernis at Atheon Security. So learn more about CMMC 2.0 and how you can be ready to work with the Department of Defense and other agencies with key insights to understand Title 32 of the Code of Federal Regulations, the cybersecurity control requirements, organizational readiness, and the timing of implementation. As always, all registered participants will earn one PDH certificate. Registration is open right now. Are you interested in sharing your knowledge on current educational topics for First Friday with our members? We're now accepting presentation applications for spring 2025. Please visit our website to learn more and submit your topic today. Sponsorships are also available to help support this very popular program. Several SAME national programs are in full swing and would like to invite you to participate. The SAME National Leadership nominations are now open. Nominations for the National President-elect, Vice President, Elected Director are now open. The deadline to submit a nomination or self-nominate is December 1st, 2020. December 1st. The National LDP class application for 2025 and 2026 is now open. Deadline to apply is December 1st. Class members selected will begin their year-long training at the 2025 JETC next May in Louisville. And then the DC and Nova Post Leadership and Mentoring Program applications are also now open. Join us on a regional level as we grow young professionals with our monthly sessions with regional leaders in the DC and Northern Virginia areas. Applications are due on Friday, December 6th. So some of the upcoming DC Post opportunities, to save the date for the DC and Nova Post Leadership and Mentoring graduation on Friday, December 6th. We have a great lineup of keynote and special speakers for our 2024 class of young professionals. The DC and Nova Post are also joining forces with the upcoming Wreaths Across America volunteer event on Saturday, December 14th. Join us as we honor our veterans with Wreath Lane at Arlington National Cemetery, followed by a special introduction to the Old Guard and a nearby networking lunch on this special day. And we're also excited to announce our 29th annual DC Post Awards and Military Branch Service Awards program is set for Wednesday, January 29th at the National Press Club. You won't want to miss this celebratory event. Nominations for the DC Post Awards will open early next week. We will have 8 military branches attending this event, and sponsorships will be available. And then save the date for our upcoming return for the DC and Nova Post Small Business Conference here in Washington, D.C. Join us on Wednesday, April 30th to connect, communicate, and collaborate with local, state, district, and federal agencies and AEC industry networks on this one-day conference that you won't want to miss. And we got a great lineup for the Friday first webinars in the new year. These topics have been organized and programmed. Registration will start 1 month in advance of each of these dates. You can see these dates on our website and more at same.org/DC Post. We have more educational events, First Fridays, networking, and business development to help you reach your goals for the rest of the year and into the new year. And would you like to reach a community of 7,000 architecture, engineering, construction, technology leaders? With the DC Post annual sponsorship, you have the opportunity to leverage our network to showcase your firm with visibility and international recognition you won't get anywhere else. So support with annual sponsorship, like the First Friday series, and at our individual events throughout the year, like our upcoming awards program at the National Press Club. Check out the benefits on our DC website today. And then join us, the SAME community at the largest conference of the year, the 2024 SAME Federal Small Business Conference, which is November 20 through 22nd in New Orleans. Looking forward to seeing you all there. Bree, Bill, and I will be returning to take our session on creating differentiators to a new level. We hope you'll be able to join us on our panel, Engineering Differentiators using Artificial Intelligence. It's going to be a great conference with lots of educational topics and of course, networking and learning all about FY25 AEC opportunities for all businesses. Last year's SBC had over 5,000 people, so we can't wait to see you all there. So again, thank you all for attending this year's First Friday webinar with Rebecca Horton from Miller Knoll and providing great educational content today. Look for our email labeled document delivery with the slide, PDH certificate, opt-in list of registered participants, and we'll post a recording on our website later on this month. You also get an email from our presenters and more information that was presented today and how you can sign up for their newsletter and announcements on upcoming events. So everyone have a great weekend. We look forward to seeing you at the next SAME event. So thank you all.
Thanks, Whitney.